For decades, the gold standard for election security was isolation. If a system is air-gapped, it remains beyond the reach of external networks, governed by strict physical controls and sovereign oversight. But the logistics of modern elections have moved away from that model. Today, local jurisdictions rely on cloud-based, third-party software to manage the massive administrative burden of running a vote. One prominent example is Konnech Inc. and its Poll Chief platform, which provides an integrated software suite to manage poll worker recruitment, payroll, and scheduling. This is the Konnech homepage, advertising Poll Chief as a 100% cloud-based solution. To function, this system requires workers to input highly sensitive personal identifying information, including social security numbers. The company supports this with specific claims regarding its security architecture and domestic hosting infrastructure. These assurances create a perceived perimeter. However, when an administrative tool connects to the internet, it introduces a topological path that may extend far beyond the jurisdictional borders intended by the contract. This is the Los Angeles County Election Network diagram. It maps hundreds of interconnected systems required to manage over 5 million voters. The outer nodes represent third-party APIs. Each connection is a point where the county's secure environment meets an external vendor's infrastructure. This creates a critical exposure point. Administrative software modules serve as bridges into the network, often without the same level of code auditing required for the core voting systems. By deconstructing this network map and analyzing raw network traffic, we can model how these external dependencies establish a pathway for data to move across borders. In an API-driven ecosystem, the traditional security boundary is gone. If the administrative edge is exposed to a vulnerability, that exposure reaches the core tallying architecture. For cloud-based software, the attack surface is the total sum of all points where an unauthorized user can try to enter or extract data from the environment. This security trails subdomain list shows Konnech's actual footprint. Each entry represents a distinct internet-accessible portal for a different jurisdiction. We can see endpoints for Boston alongside auto-discover nodes and demonstration sites, showing testing and live administrative portals share the same network. This next page shows high-value targets, including Denver and Allegheny. This proliferation introduces hundreds of external connection points that must be individually secured. On the final page, we see core API endpoints and auto-discover records used for system configurations. These are the primary gateways where data enters and exits the vendor's cloud. Poll Chief is not a self-contained application, but a broadly distributed set of public access points mapped across the critical infrastructure of dozens of jurisdictions. Returning to the Los Angeles County model, this specific sector shows where peripheral software handles election worker data. Information flows from here into the data exchange layer, a central API. From there, the data continues directly into the core VSAP tallying architecture. This means a payload or a data alteration at the administrative level is not isolated. It has a direct, automated pathway into the core systems responsible for the count. Relying on logical separation is ineffective when APIs create constant data bridges between unaudited vendors and sensitive tabulation environments. Data sovereignty refers to the legal requirement that sensitive government data must be physically stored and processed on servers within the United States. This map shows the geographical path that data packets take across the internet, based on MTR analyses. The traces show that Poll Chief application data consistently routed through these specific IP blocks. These IP ranges are operated by China Telecom and China Unicom, designated as military-civil fusion entities. At these specific hops, the network traces showed over 50% of the data packets dropping. In network analysis, this behavior is a primary indicator of a man-in-the-middle scenario, where packets are intercepted, mirrored, or redirected for analysis before reaching their final destination. This evidence proves that data sovereignty can be bypassed at the routing layer, rendering domestic-only hosting contracts completely irrelevant if the data is shuttled through adversarial infrastructure. These risks do not stay confined to a single vendor. Corporate acquisitions allow specific technological vulnerabilities to migrate. In 2016, Konnech sold its mobile voting system to Votum, integrating that technology into cast iron. Votum then sold its voter registration business to Knowinc in 2019, which merged with BPro's Total Vote system. By 2025, Liberty Vote acquired Dominion Voting Systems. linking this inherited chain to over half the nation's infrastructure. This creates a persistence problem. Legacy code architectures are often inherited and integrated into much larger, trusted environments, where they may remain unexamined for years. Corporate consolidation acts as a layer of complexity, taking a specific technological behavior and scaling it into a national critical infrastructure risk. The pattern of data routing observed in the MTR traces raises a core question about the operational logic of a domestic election vendor. Konnech maintained a Chinese subsidiary, Hongzhang Technology, which partnered with state-linked firms like Huawei, a company currently under U.S. indictment for theft and racketeering. We also see a dual patenting strategy. This is Chinese patent CN101477-654A, describing election logistics synchronization systems that closely align with poll chiefs' functional architecture. Maintaining identical intellectual property in both the US and China creates a mechanism for mirroring code and data flows between jurisdictions. The network vulnerabilities mapped in Los Angeles and the foreign routing patterns are consistent with a dual operational structure that spans these two jurisdictions. Standard perimeter security cannot protect the system when third-party software creates automated, trusted connections deep within the network. Addressing this requires CISA-led forensic audits of all third-party API integrations to identify and close these data bridges. Federal oversight must expand to include any corporate acquisition involving the critical election supply chain, ensuring legacy code is vetted before it reaches a national scale. We must also see strict enforcement of the Foreign Agents Registration Act for any vendor maintaining foreign patents or utilizing adversarial telecommunications infrastructure. Until these integration points are treated with the same scrutiny as the voting machines themselves, the nation's election infrastructure remains vulnerable to the same supply chain vectors we've mapped.